Hello, world, and welcome to Grounded and Guided. I'm your host, Lynette Waltham, and I just am so happy that you're choosing to spend this moment with me. Today, I want to talk about the intuitive language, the sensory language that we use when we are tapping into our intuition. And I say sensory because it is about feeling and using our senses to communicate. We are hearing, seeing, smelling, tasting, knowing, feeling on just such a different level.
Our ability to feel and use that sensory language really is our superpower. When you think about what's happening in the world and everybody just feels almost a bit threatened by AI and maybe where technology is going, just remember that computers cannot feel. That is a human superpower. That is a soul superpower. And we can tap into that and we can utilize that and expand in ways that we've never really dreamed we could probably expand before. So let's just really dive into that superpower and how we can really communicate using a sensory language.
So this really become very much a pillar in my understanding when I decided that I am going to develop my psychic abilities. That was a very conscious choice for me. So if you've listened to some other episodes and you understand my story a little bit or have heard my story, you've heard me talk about that becoming a channeler and an energetic healer is a skill set that I really developed. It is something that I made a conscious choice to pursue. And I learned and I experienced and I gained an understanding. And it was where I learned about the 6 clairs. There's claircognizance, clairvoyant, clairaudient, clairsentient, clairalience, and clairgustance. Claircognizance, this is that clear knowing where like you just know that something is true without knowing how. And for me, like I'll get that very often more deeply in the depths of me where it's just like I know that I have to take action on something and I can't ignore it. Every time I quiet, it gets a little louder and it pulls me. And so that's how like I know that that's coming from my intuition. Clairalience is this psychic sense of smell. So you may have experienced at times where you're in a space and there is no explanation why you might be smelling cigarette smoke or a very distinct perfume smell. I can remember going to visit a friend of mine. I was about halfway there and I could just smell BO. So I did the good old like armpit check smell. Be like, is this me? Did I forget to put deodorant on? Am I really smelling myself today? And no, it was not me. And it just kept getting stronger and stronger. And then once I just allowed myself to pause and tune in, I realized that there was a soul with me in the car. I had a passenger, and that was just like a really cool thing. This was the first time I'd ever experienced anything like this. And this would have been one of the very first senses that kind of started to come to me when I chose to develop my psychic abilities. So after I first set the intention and just allowed that to come into my awareness and be open to it, I can remember waking up in the middle of the night and I could hear an area of the floor in my bedroom creak. And that floor only makes a noise when there is like someone's stepped on it. So I'm very aware that there was a presence there. a soul there. And as I kind of like allowed myself to just sink into that a little bit more, I could start to smell spearmint. So not peppermint, spearmint, like a very distinct smell, and like just so close to me. And so, and then I could even just like feel the energy so close to me. And I just allowed that experience to just happen. And I fell back to sleep. And when I woke up the next day, I was very curious. There's a person in my life who I knew ate mint, but like they hadn't passed. And when I talked to my family, they're like, no, they like peppermint. They don't like those green, like spearmint candies. And then I was talking to another individual who I recently had reconnected with, who had been in my life in the past. And her mother had crossed over about, I think it was about 2 years prior to us having this conversation. And she had said to me that, Lynette, my mom always chewed spearmint gum. Like that is such very much an identifier for her. And it was just like this sense of knowing, yeah, like that's exactly who that soul was that come to visit me. And this soul was someone who pulled me forward. It was someone that I knew, and they pulled me forward and they made me trust myself and recognize that what I was experiencing and where I was going was important and I needed to pursue it. And I followed that. Then there's clairgustance. So this is clear tasting. So you get that like a psychic taste of something in your mouth without having consumed it, without having eaten anything. And this is a clair for me that is, it's not as strong. I'm not going to lie. I can tap into it and it does. For some clients, it will come in from time to time when it is like really necessary to hit home that message for them. Because you see, I'm using all of these clairs, these 6 clair senses, this intuitive language differently with each individual. And so for the messages to come across for that individual, sometimes I do need that psychic sense of taste in order for me to support the channeled message that person is to have. Clairvoyance, this is that clear seeing. So the individual sees colors, images, or visions. And this was one of the senses that probably come to me first. It is one of my most clear senses. I use this one a lot when I am channeling and energetic healing for clients. When I'm using the Akashic records, they play out like a film strip for me. So I hear, see, and feel those records very clearly. And so my scene is in my mind's eye. And it took me a while to be able to trust myself and to be able to say that I am a channeler, because it wasn't until I kind of like stepped in the community and talked to various different people that I realized a lot of us have clairvoyance in that we see it in the mind's eye. We do not see those that have crossed over or past loved ones or angels or dragons in the 3D physical. A lot of us see them in our mind's eye. So it's almost that when I look forward and I tap in, there's like a layer there that I am seeing in the space that I'm in physically. I see kind of like a layer. I see my spirit guides, and then I maybe see the wall that's next to me. But that layer is in my mind's eye. Clairaudience is that sense of hearing. So that hearing this internal or external sounds, voices or words. And to me, I hear those sounds just in my peripheral, and I hear them differently than I would hear someone speaking directly to me, if they were in the room with me, or if you were on this Zoom with me, I'm hearing clairaudiently very differently. Just like I said, that there's kind of like a layer that I see with clairvoyance. There's also this layer there in my peripheral that I'm able to hear and listen to. And so that's kind of like that's external. I also hear things from my heart and my gut and my soul. I hear them from my depths. And clairaudience was that first connection that I had with my spirit guides. So I can remember just like sitting on the floor, cross-legged. I'd done a little bit of a meditation to drop me into the present moment. And I recognized that I could start to hear things that were very different than the heavy mind chatter that I have been hearing for most of my life. This was very different. There was like a love and support to it, to the voice, to the messages that I were hearing, and they felt trustworthy. And so then I leaned into that. And I leaned into that with this clear feeling, and that's clairsentience, this clear feeling that you can sense energies or emotions or like have those gut feelings that I have been talking about. And for me, that is how I can really distinguish the different energies that I'm communicating with. They're very much as a different energy from soul to soul to soul. Angels have a different feeling about them. Archangels have a different feeling about them. So you can use that clairsentience to really distinguish who and what you are communicating with. And just because I'm talking about communicating with some of those like external supports, all of this applies to communicating with that internal support, communicating with your soul, your intuition, who you are. And it's really interesting as I'm sitting here and I'm leaning into this conversation about how my journey has really unfolded. A lot of it has been where I allow myself to just to open up more to the world around me, open myself up more to the universe, open myself up to healing. And what has happened is as I've opened myself up, I've had an experience that I had no explanation around it. I experienced it and I moved through it. And that created a bit of awareness. And then from there, I moved into learning more about it, diving into it, having more in-depth conversations with others, and it created an understanding. So now we kind of have a little bit of understanding that the language that we communicate with intuitively is different than what we might use in our everyday. There's sensory, there's feeling around it. And so as you choose to develop your intuition, it's really important to recognize that you need to be available and open to feeling. And I guess that's really when I talk about this openness, I just allowed myself to feel. Every time I open myself a little bit more, I open myself up to more feeling, to more emotions. Because you see, there was a time when I had shut myself down to feel. I can look back on my life and I can see as a child, in order to just make myself feel safe, I put up walls. I shut down some emotions and some feelings. And I just continued to do that as I become an adult. What was really impactful was when I stepped into a job in the finance industry. And it's an industry that asks for no emotion. We're working with money. How can money have emotion? But It is actually one of the most emotional things, but I feel like that's a whole other podcast episode. But at that time, I believed that I needed to close myself off, keep those emotions locked and tight, be logical. There was no room for emotion in the world of finance and processing loans for people. And that belief of like shut myself down, close myself down, and continuing to do that over and over again just put up more and more walls and barriers until the point they were just so tight around me. And even as I do that, my whole body just wants to get tight and closed in. And I feel so constrained, so pushed, and so tense. And that process of shutting myself down, closing myself down, it brought me to an emotional breakdown. Because that is the thing about when we are allowing ourselves to feel. There's an openness that happens with the body. When we let ourselves to flow those emotions and we let ourselves feel, our body just starts to relax a little bit because we're not holding to those emotions. We're not holding to those feelings. We're just allowing them to flow through us. And that is a lot of the work that I've been doing. That is a lot of my transformation journey, is getting myself back to that place where I am feeling. Because the more in tune that I am with feeling, the stronger that I can communicate intuitively. And I recognize that when I made that very conscious intention to develop my psychic abilities, I was also making a very conscious commitment to myself that I was going to feel. And what come up with feeling also came healing, because it brought emotions from my subconscious into my conscious. And in order to allow them to fully move through me, I had to feel them fully as well. And that process has been very intense at times. I am not going to lie. I have hit many points where I'm just like, enough, I'm done. Like, I'm done. I don't want to go deeper. But there was that sense, that clairsentience, the clairaudience, the claircognizance that pulled me forward, that called me forward, that gut feeling that I knew that I had to keep moving forward. And so I did. And that deepened the trust that I had with myself and my psychic abilities and this intuitive language that we communicate with. If you're choosing to connect with your intuitive abilities and tap into your intuition, be prepared that you're going to have to feel. It's all sensory. It's all about being able to feel into different energies, being able to feel into yourself, being able to feel what your body, your mind, your soul has to tell you, being able to feel the message and create understanding from that. And so if that is something that maybe is a little bit triggering for you, gives you a little bit of jolt, a little bit of a charge within your body, we're just creating awareness. Let's just honor that that is a message within itself. There's obviously something your subconscious saying that there's maybe something there for you to work on. And that's okay. Because that's my role. That's what I'm here to do, is to not only help you develop that intuitive ability, but also help you to recognize what could get in the way of that. And that might mean that you need a little bit of help. And that is absolutely okay. Because I would not be where I am today if it wasn't for getting help and support from others to help me heal my wounds, process my feelings, create an understanding for myself, along with that duality of learning about channeling and various different aspects of spirituality. And just know I'm here when you're ready. Thank you for sharing this moment with me. Take care, everybody.